Good afternoon. Welcome to CDBG Advisory Committee meeting. Today's date is August 20th, 2008, Wednesday. Can we get a roll call, please?
Committee Member Zari Amarian.
Here.
Committee Member Alec Bagdasarian.
Here.
Vice Chair Gary Cornell.
Here.
Committee Member Efren Olivares.
Here.
Chairman Chang Lee.
Here. Okay, next item on the agenda, 1B, is the report of Assistant Director, Mr. Duran.
Yes, Chairman Lee, I'd like to report that the agenda for the August 20th, 2008 meeting of the CDBG Advisory Committee was posted on Thursday, August 14th on the bulletin board outside of City Hall.
Okay, next item is minutes. Can we get a motion on the minutes?
Yes, having gone through the minutes, it was quite hectic, and might add a very good job by the recording secretary. I move that we accept the minutes as submitted for last May 8th.
Second.
Okay, we have motion to second.
Committee Member Zari Amarian.
Aye.
Committee Member Alec Bagdasarian.
Yes.
Vice Chair Gary Cornell.
Yes.
Committee Member Efren Olivares.
Yes.
Chairman Chang Lee.
Yes. Okay, item number 3, the action items. We're going to do some switching of the order here, so we'll do 3C first for review and approving of the Code of Conduct guidelines. Mr. Duran?
Yes, Chairman Lee, I will give a brief introduction and then I'm going to turn it over to the Chief Assistant City Attorney Michael Garcia, who is the attorney assigned to the CDBG Advisory Committee, and we'll let him speak on the issue before us. But in terms of background, at the May 8th CDBG Advisory Committee meeting, which was our last meeting, there was much discussion regarding the issue of individual committee members expressing views which may be contrary to funding recommendations already made and approved by the CDBG Advisory Committee. There was some discussion about what could be done in terms of protocol to try to prevent that. So to address the issue and to try to get past the issue, staff was directed to draft a possible code of conduct guideline, and I'd like to stress the term guideline. But I also wanted it to be noted that, to staff's knowledge, and again, Mr. Garcia could speak to this, there is no existing guideline relative to any of the other boards and commissions that speaks to committee members expressing views regarding items passed by boards or commissions. And there's probably a very good reason for that, which again we'll talk about in a minute. So we drafted a guideline, and so now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Garcia, and he can expand on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Mr. Duran provided me with a copy of the policy and a copy of the memorandum that he provided to the committee, and I wanted to attend today's meeting to discuss just some issues with the proposed guideline and maybe give you some direction that you might want to take. Just looking at the proposed guideline, what it does is after and this was prepared by Mr. Duran, after the committee adopts its recommendations and forwards those to the council, there is a line in the proposed guideline, for instance, that says committee members are expected to support the committee's recommendations. However, if a committee member feels compelled to express his or her personal views in non-support of the funding recommendations in general, particular funding recommendations, or the funding recommendation process, he or she shall do so by stating very clearly that the views are being expressed as an individual, and by refraining from any negative personal comments about the committee or the committee members. Generally, and Mr. Duran is right, as far as I'm aware, there are no other committees that have, or city boards or commissions that have this type of policy. But actually that's one issue. My bigger concern is just one having to do with both due process and First Amendment issues, and that's just with the right to express one's views, not only to the public, but when they come here to the council meeting. Just looking at the policy, I can see very clearly that obviously I think it would be appropriate for any individual commissioner who's speaking to the council or speaking to the public, if they are speaking on their own, to make it very clear that they are speaking for themselves. I think that's very appropriate. They should do that. Where we start to get concerned as the city attorney's office is where we have statements that there's an expectation that a committee member will, so to speak, toe the line or have the same views as the other committee members, and that there be a refrain from personal negative comments about other commissioners or about the commission in general. Obviously, comments that are truly of a personal nature, and by truly personal, I mean not having anything to do with the committee's jurisdiction, having to do just with a personal attack. I mean, obviously that's something that could be regulated as well, but if a committee member is criticizing either the full committee or individual, the viewpoints that have been expressed by other committee members, we think that that's something that's protected under the First Amendment, and we caution, extreme caution in going in that direction to regulate that type of activity. The other thing that I note is that what was proposed, and I think this was the direction that Mr. Duran received to bring back for you, was that one of the remedies here could be censure. And because censure is sort of a formal act of a committee, whether it's done by the council or if it's done by one of the city's boards and commissions of its own members, that itself triggers due process rights, and the right to be heard, the right to receive notice before they're going to be censured. So our suggestion is, one is to decide whether it wants to go forward with a policy of this sort, and if it does, to maybe direct us to come back with some revised language, because I think, in our view, this goes a little bit too far. The other option is to, rather than having this sort of code of conduct, to just have maybe a discussion on what the committee expects of its members without actually adopting a policy that could result in punishment of any of its members. So that's the general thrust of the discussion I wanted to put out there before you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
If I may, just a couple of, I was concerned about the same thing, by the way, because I believe in, obviously, freedom of speech, and we should all, each of us should have the opportunity to disagree with the committee. What I take from what happened, which resulted in this, were two things. One was the fact that the committee voted as a body, and it was a unanimous decision. Subsequent to that, things changed. And we as individuals have the right to do that. My bigger concern, and I stated this before, is if we have a chair or a vice chair whose position, in my view, is to support the committee and voice the opinions of the committee at a council hearing, but either the vice chair or the chair decides that they're not in concert with our body, even though we had a unanimous decision, there's an inconsistency there that I'm not quite sure how one would handle. And I think that's aside from the comments made about the commissioners themselves. This is strictly the responsibility of a chair or a vice chair. And that, in my view, didn't happen because there was a difference or a change of mind between the voting and the presentation to the city council. So, has that ever happened before? I know in DRB, there are members who disagree with design decisions and so on, and they voice their opinions. This is a little bit different, I think.
Mr. Olivares, I think that's a good concern, and let me first say that by virtue of being either chair or vice chair, I'm not sure that somebody gives up their First Amendment rights to express a view. Again, I think, though, that the committee can't expect that if they are going to speak individually, as individuals, they state that they're going to be speaking as individuals and that they don't speak for the committee. You mentioned the DRB example. I think that's one. That practice doesn't occur anymore, but it used to be a practice of the DRBs to assign a member of the majority position on a particular project and the minority position in the project to come speak at a meeting if they were available, or the planning staff would ask someone to come from each side to give those viewpoints. That way, if there's a concern that a majority of the committee has made a decision, but the chairperson, the vice chairperson who actually has made that, who was part of that decision but voted against it, they may have a different view. Then you have somebody from each side come and represent the viewpoints. I'll note that when we've had the actual CDBG decisions come before the council, I've noticed all of you have been here, so I think that's an opportunity for all of you to speak, or at the prior meeting to assign each somebody to speak from each viewpoint if that's the decision.
I guess the issue here as well is that does those comments bear any effect on the final decision. If there's no impact on the decisions made and the views expressed by a person just is of a, I guess I don't know what the right word is that not doing the right thing, not following the common courtesy and so forth, we can just view it as the person receiving it, in this case I believe was the city council, can just put that aside and say, I'm not going to take any action on this is because it's outside, or if the letter is stated as such that it's on behalf of the committee instead of an individual, just send it back saying, you know, if it's on behalf of the committee, add others' names to it or things of that sort, and not necessarily pass something that is going to impact, you know, for years to come, you know, how people can talk and conduct their, you know, just leave it at that. Especially if no other committee has seen the need to have certain code of conduct adopted, I would just say, you know, we'll just see what happens again as far as the common courtesy element of it goes, and just make sure that it does not have an impact on our decisions made.
Right, and again, I think the remedy for that situation is to do exactly as you say. Obviously, the council can take the comments that come in and weigh who's giving them and the import of them. Obviously, if there's a concern about a way that the committee's viewpoint was expressed before the council, then that can come back before the committee so you can have a discussion. But again, once you get into this policy of having a guideline and having potential punishment, that's where it becomes a problem. So I think that you're right. That's probably the best way to handle it.
So basically what we're saying, excuse me, is we handle it as it comes.
Yeah.
The situation, we deal with it as a committee every time it comes up, whatever comes up.
And I mentioned this when we spent 45 minutes to an hour talking about it, that we were wasting our time, unfortunately. You can't regulate common sense and common courtesy, unfortunately. It does reflect poorly on the person that says those things, and unfortunately I have problems with this as well. I think it does go too far, in terms of trying to regulate something that we have no purview to regulate, and would get us in trouble. So the question is, I think the frustration, and it's still, you can almost sense it a little bit, is that when the decision is made, ultimately something like this undermines the credibility of the committee. And so I think it's up to the public at that point to kind of weigh that person's statement when it's contrary to something that they voted on in the past. And it's a responsibility of the council member who appointed the particular member when they see that the I don't want to call it transgression, but what occurred was such that it impacted the committee in such a powerful way. They have a responsibility to act within their powers as well. So the code of conduct, as I said, I don't think it's necessary. You can't regulate common sense. You can't regulate common courtesy. It's frustrating, yeah, but we don't live in some kind of totalitarian system here. People can say what they want. If they say something stupid, then somebody has to look at them and go, hey, that was stupid. That's it.
Comments?
For once, I agree with Mr. Merriam here. I think enoug's been said. I said on May 8th, also before, also in the reporter's article, enough's enough. I took the option of writing each of my colleagues a letter that for any pain, suffering that I caused them or the committee, that I apologized. It was an isolated incident. Are we going to, if we start here, are we going to start with the council? Are we going to say we can't put our elbows on the table? Are we going for grooming next? As the Deputy City Attorney mentioned, there's a gray line area and infringes somewhat on your First Amendment rights. What I can perhaps compromise on and look into and have the committee look into this is for the outgoing chair to name a committee of 3. Look into this, and perhaps an unwritten code of protocol guidelines that can be addressed when new members come aboard. Not anything signed, not anything passed here by the committee, but have a consensus on with the 3 committee members that this can be passed on for a new orientation on a one-to-one basis when Mr. Duran has orientation with a new incoming member. I can that, but no restrictions. You get a restriction here. There's another one here. And for yourself, what can I say? What can I say that I won't be censored for my remarks? And this board member took a lot. I didn't get up and walk out. I was right here to take it. And I did. And I don't know what more I can do to get this passed here and get on with the business of why we're here, and that's the people's business, and not to lambaste me. We need to move on. The credibility of this committee is at stake. We got to focus. We have a challenge ahead of us, even more dismal than last year, and we have to start moving forward. Now, I would like to see this, and hopefully the outgoing chair will do this, but if we need to address this, then my recommendation is, I always try to have recommendations that we can follow up on, is to have a committee of 3, look over the protocol rules. These will be unsigned and given to Mr. Duran. So these are pretty much the committee rules, and we'll go over them after the committee. They'll come to the full board here, and we'll have a consensus on it. And if we concur, or majority will, then this can be given to Mr. Duran for future orientation for new members of this board. But please, let's move on.
Agreed. We've wasted enough time. We wasted enough time on this, and I think what's the proper process here? I appreciate you coming out. I think all of us do. And I know
have a question, Mr. Garcia. What is what Mr. Cornell is suggesting? How is that different from what we're trying to do here?
Waste of time.
Well, I hear some similarities, having some sort of process. I'm not sure if you actually appointed a committee of 3, that would still be subject to all the requirements of having an open public meeting. That's one issue. But the other issue is, you have just more of a guideline which is more suggestive as opposed to imposing some restrictions. But again, it's a policy call if we want to go down this road of having a policy at all. And if you do, then I suggest that if you maybe have one person, and maybe Mr. Duran and I can work together with one of the committee members or 2 of the committee members and go through it. If that's the direction, we can.
Can we have without written policy, have a somewhat silent, I guess, kind of protocol where you orient during the orientation, bring this up? Is that possible? Of what are we talking about here?
Well, again, it's a policy call as far as what the committee wants to do, I think. If you want to have something so that, just as an example, I'm not suggesting this is what you want to do, but if you wanted for when you get a new committee member coming on board, Mr. Duran meet with them and say, this is once the committee meets and makes its recommendations, they all go to the council, and the views or the recommendations are presented by the chair, and then any other committee member who wishes to speak either in favor or against those is free to do so. That's probably the simplest way to do it. Anyway, you don't have to set a policy, you don't have to do anything. Mr. Duran can just sit down with those members and say, this is how it's going to work.
And I think in most cases that will solve the issue, because basically most of us, if there's some memo given to us that says if you have an issue, this is what you need to do, A, B, C, D, we'll follow that.
Yeah.
And I think that may, in fact, solve a lot of the issues without causing any complications, creating any complication that could be caused by the passing this code of conduct.
Well, I agree with that. I don't agree with going down this path, and I say that because I think any person that is elected as to be in any committee in the city should have the common sense to be able to deal with that kind of situation. And I don't think we need to put it into any guideline. I think we all need to understand it. And when you disagree with somebody, when you disagree with your wife, you have a conversation.
You do?
Usually. Sometimes she just throws me out of the house, but no.
You too,
But I mean, I think, again, I don't think we need to go any further with this. I think the point's been made. I'm not interested in having a 3-member committee to get into this kind of conversation, and I probably would not participate on it.
I wouldn't either.
Okay, so can someone move it to then maybe?
Yeah,
this week?
I'd like to move that we table this indefinitely and just
I
say bye-bye.
I second that.
We'll let you go back to your office.
Okay, we have motion and a second. Mr. Duran?
Yes, Mr. Garcia, is the motion to not take action, or?
That's correct.
I think, motion to table is fine.
Right.
Okay, motion to table indefinitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
We appreciate
Roll call,
all the
please.
time you put in.
Roll call.
Committee member Zari Amirian,
Aye.
Committee member Alec Bagdasarian,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gary Cornell,
Aye.
Committee member Efren Olivares,
Yes.
Chairman Chang Lee.
Aye.
Martha, did you get the second?
Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that was my last act before I relinquish
So you have one more?
Oh, I have one more? Oh, that's right. The very important issue here. 3A, which is the selection of a chairperson and vice chairperson. I'm open for recommendation. Can chair also make a recommendation too?
Sure.
Well, I think you need to tell us some protocol steps first, Mr. Duran.
All right.
The protocol steps are that the chair will entertain nominations for the chairmanship. Once there are no more nominations being put forward, then you close nominations and you take a vote on each nomination. And then you do the same thing for the vice chair position. Although my understanding is you can also entertain nominations for the chair and vice chair together if you get such a nomination and there are no other nominations after that, and then take a vote.
Mr. Chairman, I would like at this time, for you as chair and for the powers you have with Robert's rules, to postpone the selection of chair and vice chair until our next meeting on October 8th. And this way we'll give an opportunity for our new fellow colleague to participate in the next leadership of this board.
Well, we have motion to do that now. Does anybody second that or have a new motion? If we don't have a second to your motion, then...
That was, actually, it wasn't a motion, Mr. Chairman, it was a recommendation.
Recommendation, okay.
For you as chair, which you have inherited in your Robert's rules to be able to do this.
Well, I do believe that we have 5 active members here, and, I don't see the need to postpone this to October. I'd like to proceed with selection of next chair. Anybody have a recommendation, please?
I recommend Zari to be the chairperson.
Okay.
Second that.
We have recommendation of Mr. Zara Amirian as a chair, and we have a second. Roll call, please.
Are there any other nominations for chair?
Is there any other nomination for chair?
Okay, then you can close nominations.
Yeah, close nomination.
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
So roll call would be Committee member Alec Bagdasarian,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gary Cornell,
No.
Committee member Efren Olivares,
Yes.
Committee member Chang Lee,
Yes.
And
Chairman Zara Amirian.
Not yet.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, congratulations.
And we should hear if he is interested in taking the position.
Yeah, at this point, it looks like I've been volunteered. No, I appreciate it. Yes, I accept, and I thank you all for your confidence. This body is very important to me, and I put a lot of time into it. And I look forward to moving past some of the minor issues that we've had, and to move forward with what we're here to do, and that's serve the community to the best of our abilities.
Okay, would you like to take over the chair to nominate vice chair, or would you like to do that as your first act?
Yes, new chair should take over.
All right. All yours.
Okay, now you're chair.
Oh, I forgot to bring that back.
Do you have the Burger King hat for...
Oh, it's a much bigger chair to fill. It's first of all, before I do that, I just want to thank Chang for your service. You've kept a level head, and you've guided us through both the good times and the not so good times, but we appreciate it, and we wish you all the luck and all the best moving forward. So thanks very much.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure. It's been an honor to be one of the members here. It was a learning experience, and the fact that I was part of the committee that served the city of Glendale. And yes, I'm sorry to say goodbye to this committee, but I do have another commission that's waiting for me, maybe for me to put my nickel's worth effort in there to better the community there. So I'm looking forward to my new position as a planning commissioner.
If they give you any problems, just let us know. We'll show up in force.
Thank you.
Okay, continuing 3A, now open any nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Alec Bagdasarian as a vice chair.
Second that.
Alec Bagdasarian.
Now, as the chair, do I have the ability to nominate somebody, or am I sitting out of this one?
We could pass the gavel.
Yeah, you could
Could
pass
I?
the gavel.
Well, I'm going to pass the gavel for a second to Vice Chair Gary Cornell. I would like to nominate Efren Olivares.
Any other nominations for vice chair?
I'll vote for that too.
You second that? Okay, so we have two nominations.
Is there a second for that?
Yeah, second.
Right. So we do have a second. Any other nominations? If not, I'll move the nominations for vice chair be closed. Okay, the nominations for vice chair are closed.
One second.
I may say, with all due respect, and I do appreciate it, being a vice chair, but I'm of the position now that it really would be nice to have two new, fresh, fairly new members running the, chair and vice chair. I'm still going to be around, and I'm still going to be very involved, and I do appreciate but I think if he's willing to take it, I'd prefer to go in that direction to Mr. Bagdasarian.
He's our in-house senior advisor.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Mr. Olivares, are you declining the nomination?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Secretary, can you call the roll?
Okay, let's see.
Now, this is for Alec Bagdasarian as vice chair.
Correct, as vice chair.
Okay, committee member Gary Cornell,
Yes.
committee member Efren Olivares,
Yes.
committee member Chang Lee,
Yes?
and committee member Alec Bagdasarian.
Yes.
Okay.
Chairman.
Congratulations.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Chairman Zari Amarian.
I don't want to give my opinion anymore. Yes, of course, heartily.
You guys all switched on me.
And now at this time, I'll be happy to turn it over to our new chair. Gallo.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, Alec. Okay. So let us move forward to action item 3B, which is to review and approve CDBG social service site visit schedule.
So, Mr. Chair, Moises Correa will give this report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, in your packet you have agenda item 3B, which is the CDBG Social Services Site Policy. I don't want to go over the entire policy, but again, this is very similar to what we had last year where we visit the currently funded 2008-2009 CDBG social service projects. There are a number of new projects this year which we didn't have last year, so that would be certainly one of the things we'll look at. We did propose some dates, and before I get into dates, the way we've had in the past is we've gone and visit all the sites over 3 consecutive weeks or skipping a week rather than individual visits to the agency. We thought it'd be better if, as a group, the committee does meet each of the agencies. The meetings are Brown Acted, and it is open meeting as well. The current dates that we have, again, these are very tentative, and we're not certainly we're open to suggestions for the committee. Is September 24th, October 1st, and October 15th. You'll see that we have approximately 5 or 6 agencies each of those days, and we do have a couple of agencies that are not, these are Wednesdays, are not available on Wednesdays since they run other day programs, or they're programs that are already started or finished, or will not start until in October. So there are some other alternatives for visiting those sites, including setting up appointments with our department to visit those sites personally. So I'll open up to suggestions.
Actually, I have a question. I don't have a calendar in front of me, so which days of the week are these?
These are Wednesdays.
Okay.
I have another question. As a just regular Glendale citizen, can I go on the tour?
Sure.
Okay. Sure.
And as a planning commissioner also.
Okay. Thank you.
And you're welcome to, Chang.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments?
They're very productive and looking forward to going and visiting all the organizations.
Now, I do actually have a question. If we need to have a follow-up for any reason, or we feel that the 30 minutes that we spent at that particular site wasn't enough to answer some of the questions that we may have,
Thank you.
what remedies do we have in order to do that?
Chairman Marion, we can schedule a follow-up site visit either as a group, or you can schedule an individual follow-up site visit on your own. As we mentioned in our staff report, you do have the ability now to schedule your own drop-in site visit, and built into the subrecipient agreements is that provision that the recipients are aware that committee members may drop in to observe their programs at any time.
Just to clarify, that doesn't have to be scheduled. We happen to be in the area and we can walk in, or
It's advisable that you call ahead of time to let them know that you'd like to drop by, to make sure that they're running programs and that the right people are there to meet with you. So we're suggesting consecutive Wednesday afternoons from 1 to 5. And so it'll be 3 afternoons, an average of 5 programs per day. then I think our next CDBG Advisory Committee meeting is sandwiched in between those three meetings.
Great.
We do have to get back to the agencies to firm up the dates and the meeting times, and so we'll email you a more definite schedule.
Okay. Anybody have any objections to those dates, September 24th through October 15th, Wednesdays?
Just to clarify, we're skipping one Wednesday. I see October 1st, and then I see October 15th. Is that correct?
That's correct, because October 8th is our next scheduled CDBG Advisory Committee meeting.
Okay.
And as we mentioned in the report, we purposely schedule site visits before we go out to RFP, because we want to avoid you guys going out there and getting lobbied by the organizations. And speaking of maintaining your integrity and your credibility and your impartiality, we find that it's best to do site visits before we even begin the whole application process.
Very good. Any other comments?
I move to approve.
We have a motion to approve the schedule,
I'll second that.
and we have a second. Roll call, please.
Committee Member Alec Bagdasarian,
Yes.
Committee Member Gary Cornell,
Yes.
Committee Member Chang Lee,
Yes?
Committee Member Gary Cornell.
Yes
Oh, I'm
again.
sorry. Okay. Chairman Marion.
Yes. Okay.
And Mr. Olivares says yes.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's always tough when we throw you a curveball, huh?
You all switched.
Yeah. We'll play musical chairs next week, too. That way. Okay. Action item 3D. Review and approve funding year 09 and 2010 Community Needs Assessment Strategy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know, in order for the city to receive federal funds for the CDBG, ESG, and home programs, HUD requires the city to prepare a 5-year consolidated plan. That's a 5-year strategic plan on the city's assessment of community needs and how the city proposes to address those needs through program strategies. Our current 5-year plan period is between fiscal year 05 to 2010, meaning that next summer we will be preparing the 2010 to 2015 a 5-year consolidated plan. But in years in between, HUD still requires us to check in with the community and perform some level of community needs assessment to validate the program priorities that are identified in our current 5-year strategy. So our strategy to do that and to fulfill that responsibility is outlined in our staff report, and so we're proposing this year that it comprise of 2 public hearings, one to be held on September 11th at Pacific Park Community Center, which takes care of Southwest Glendale, if you will, and then one to be held on September 17th at Menn Elementary School, which will accommodate residents in southeast Glendale. And as you know, southern Glendale is our target area for the use of the CDBG funds. And the public hearings will be formatted where we will break out into smaller discussion groups, and committee members are welcomed and encouraged to attend and be amongst the residents and hear firsthand what their needs and concerns are as it relates to how we can use the funds. This year we are also proposing to conduct an interactive survey at the Mariposa Community Fair, which is coming up on September 13th. And we propose to have staff engage with residents and walk residents through a series of boards where they will put dots on program strategies which they feel are their priorities, and then we will tabulate those results and report that out to you at the October meeting. Then we will advertise and promote our internet survey to give folks a chance to give us their input from home. And then we will obtain whatever updated needs assessments any other organizations have produced in the last year, like the Workforce Investment Board, the Healthy Start Coalition, and Healthy Cities, and the like. And so at our next meeting on October 8th, we will report out on the findings of these efforts, and then have you recommend the program priorities for fiscal year 9-10 that we will submit to the City Council.
How would we do the promoting and advertising of the internet survey, and would they be the same questions asked in the park?
Yes, for the most part, it'll be the same set of questions. HUD requires us to obtain input on the 5 program areas of community development, which would include social services and capital improvements. And then second area is housing. The third area is homelessness. The fourth area is economic development, and the fifth area is citizen participation. Obviously, for our purpose, we emphasize community development social services and community development capital improvement needs, or community centers. So that's what we would stress.
Does this require a motion?
Yeah, should get a motion.
Okay, any motion?
Going back, I'm sorry if I may, going back to internet survey, how would that be advertised, that there's an internet survey on the website for people to participate?
Yes, I'll let Mr. Carrillo expand on that.
The internet survey is really just on our city webpage, so those who hit the webpage see a link to the survey. We also would advertise it with some of our flyers to put in the link and basically the web address for the internet survey. It's hard to promote an internet survey unless you're on the web. So we try to do a combination of not only the internet survey but the community meetings as well as the Mariposa Community Fair. So it's really web-based.
Yeah, and I read here that one of the responsibilities of the new chair is to wear a sandwich board at the next city council meeting. So I can see why so quickly I was nominated. Other comments?
I move to approve the FY 09-010 Community Assessment Strategy.
Second. We got a motion and 2 seconds. Roll call?
Okay. Committee Member Alec Bagdasarian.
Yes.
Committee Member Gary Cornell.
Yes.
Committee Member Chang Lee.
Yes.
Committee Member Efren Olivares.
Yes.
Chairman Zari Almirian.
Yes. Okay, moving on to agenda item 4. 4A is receive a report regarding funding year 07-08 social service and performance reports.
Yes, Chairman Almirian, members of the committee, you have under 4A the year-end statistics for the CDBG social service programs. These were all the projects and programs that ended June 30th. And you can see the numbers served and proposed numbers, the funding amounts for the projects. All in all, it's about over 6,000 residents that were served with the CDBG program this year. A large percentage, of course, are youth activities, but it's a variety of programs and projects. A lot of these projects are going to carry over to the new fiscal year, so you'll get a chance to see in next quarter's performance report. But this is a cumulative number of all the agencies as well as their outcomes and how they did on their outcomes and goals.
Any comments or questions, gentlemen? Okay, in that case, we'll move on to agenda item 4B, receive report regarding results of monitoring of funding year 07-08 programs.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, you have with you a memo just outlining the monitoring system that we use for our programs, which we just reported on. This includes staff going out and monitoring each of the projects that are funded with CDBG funds and doing not only their desk review of the project, but also going out to the site and visiting and possibly talking to participants as well. The full report shows the monitoring dates, the agencies, the letters to the agencies, when they were submitted back, were there any concerns or findings, were there any follow-up site visits, when they were finally clear the project. by and large, we do have, I think our staff did a great job in working with the agencies this year. You'll see that last year we did have some issues, but this year it seems that we're doing a lot better in monitoring and working with technical assistance with the agencies so that most of these issues have been cleared, and a lot of them will be corrected, especially for the new fiscal year. I think a lot of the concern there is some staff turnover from some of the agencies that unfortunately takes time for them to get used to our forms, our procedures. So you'll see that's why we do have some agencies that have more concerns on some forms versus more substantive issues like financials or not turning in reports in time. So a lot of it has to do with some turnover, and then continue to provide the technical assistance that our staff does greatly throughout the year. So this is a combination of all the programs, including the emergency shelter grant programs that we fund as well with the homeless assistance funds.
Gentlemen, any questions or comments on this?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a couple of comments.
Yes, Mr. Duran.
You'll see that if there's a common theme or a common thread related to the findings and concerns, it has to do with the applicant information forms and agencies, for whatever reason, not being able to get all the information we need on those forms, or using last year's forms instead of this year's forms, or being inconsistent. So to address that, what we're doing this year is, as they submit their quarterly reports, we are requiring them to submit copies of all of the applicant information forms they collected for that quarter, so that we can review them early in the year and begin to work with them on what they need to do to make sure that they're all accurate and complete, so we can avoid that for next year.
Now, Mr. Durant, can you explain to us how vital these applicant information forms are? Why are they important?
The applicant information forms are the intake forms that the agencies collect to self-certify the income status of the families or the clients that they're serving. And we need that because we need to be able to show HUD that we serve over 60% of low-income families, and that's to be eligible for us to fund these programs. So it's of vital importance.
Let's follow up on that. I guess some of the findings were using the last fiscal year's forms, and I guess that might be the question. How important is that? That they didn't use the new form.
That's a good question, Committee Member Lee. We actually update the forms every couple of years. For example, this year's form has an entirely new clause at the bottom of the form. Or the income limits, the boxes they check off are updated, and HUD revises the income limits. So these forms are revised every couple of years, so it's important for them to use the current forms. And so what we currently do, it's not until we go out towards the end of the year and do the monitoring that we discover that they're using the wrong forms, or that they're not accurate or complete. So now we're going to learn that during the first quarter, and we'll be able to provide some technical assistance.
Have there been any organizations that have shown a consistent inability to correctly monitor and have these forms filled out to the extent which we might be concerned in the future about their ability to monitor and use the CDBG monies the way they're supposed to be?
Yes, Chairman Marion, as Mr. Carrillo alluded to, the most consistent correlation between having problems with how to fill out the forms and not is with staff turnover or new organizations. Sometimes it takes them a while to build the capacity to know how to complete reports that they need to submit to our office. Or staff turnover. New staff grab last year's form and they start using it, and there wasn't anybody there to correct it.
So basically, going back to Zara's question, Chairperson Zara's question, have we held back any funds because of this to date, or we have not?
Committee Member Bagdasarian, not for this. In most cases, it's a matter of meeting with the agency, explaining them exactly what the issues are, and them correcting it. And in all cases, they come around and correct it, because they will not receive new funding. We won't take away funding that's already been spent, but they will not get the new funding until these things are corrected. We have a clause in our subrecipient agreement which specifies that they are aware that if we have any outstanding monitoring findings, that their new funding will not be released.
Going back to HUD and their relationship with the city, have they ever held any funds back or penalized us for not having complete information, or they just like to see them?
Committee Member Bagdasarian, no. To date, HUD has not made that finding against the city and held back the city's funding. HUD's main concern is that we do an adequate job in monitoring. So again, even if when we perform our monitoring and we find problems, if HUD is assured that we are doing what we need to do to address those problems and work with the agencies, they're satisfied. So it has to be something really egregious before HUD begins to penalize the city.
Just for our information, is it like a one-page application, 3-4 pages? I mean, can they not start serving that youth or that applicant until they have filled out the form and work with them? And what is the...
Committee Member Bagdasarian, it's a one-page intake form, and for a couple of agencies, we are suggesting that they not serve that client until they've turned in a complete, accurate intake form. And in a couple of cases, that's what they've agreed to do.
Now, as far as the form could be a one-page form, but does it require that they bring, I don't know, the receipt of the gas bill or the W-2 form, or what does it take to do these forms?
It's a self-certification form.
So basically, they just fill out the form and we just...
Right. If they check off that their income is at a certain level and they sign and attest that this is true and accurate information, that's all we need.
So in a sense, everybody should be able to fill that out.
Yeah.
Committee Member Lee?
Yeah, I just have a question. I should have asked this question when we're reviewing 3D. It's regarding, your effort to reach out to the community. I know we have every year abundance of applicants versus the funding that's available, and I know that you have a few time slots and locations where you're conducting the survey. Is there any other efforts from the city or from your department to reach out to some of the other community members who may not know or aware of this program? What type of programs or efforts is in place, or is are you planning to have something like that other than the location and the time that you've specified here?
Committee Member Lee, currently our community needs assessment strategy is as it's outlined in the report. If you have a recommendation for us to add additional steps, we'll entertain that. Did you have something?
Yes, Committee Member Lee, members of the committee, yeah, we do make attempts to make sure we publish in definitely a variety of newspapers, including English, Spanish, Armenian, Korean language newspapers, and we now are, of course, making translations also available at the meetings for all the different languages. We did have Korean-speaking residents at our last meeting, so that was an effort I think that Committee Member Lee brought up a year ago,
right,
to make sure we branch out and serve the entire community, which again we did. We are certainly going to provide those translations again. It's a bit of more expense, but again, it does provide the outreach, and as we build that base, we'll have that database of names. We do send them out to letters and so on to the people who have come to past meetings. So we'll continue to build upon those suggestions, but again, we welcome any suggestions from the committee, and we will continue to do our outreach through all of our our meetings, our fairs, our community agencies as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Questions? Okay, moving on to agenda item 5, other business. We've got one, that the next CDBG Advisory Committee meeting will be Wednesday, October 8th, 2008. Any further comments about that meeting? Mr. Duran, Mr. Creel?
No.
Okay, any other business, gentlemen?
I have one, Mr. Chairman. I see we have a new staff member. I would like at this time if Mr. Duran would introduce our new recording secretary so we can enthusiastically welcome her as part of the team.
Thank you, Committee Member Cornell. Yes, I'd like to introduce Martha Munguia. Martha is an office operations supervisor, and she actually works primarily for Madeline Blake, the director of the department, and myself as the assistant director. But Martha has graciously agreed to help us out. I think we mentioned at our last meeting in May that Irina was transferring to the Housing Assistance Unit in our department, so she's no longer with the Community Development Block Grant Program, so Martha's going to be helping us out.
Welcome, Martha.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You have a hard act to follow, Martha, but we have the confidence in you that you can come across the job.
Thank you.
And nice to have you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other business, gentlemen?
Just to comment to Chang, good luck in your new position. I didn't get a chance to say that, but good luck. I'm sure you'll do a good job over there, too.
I need the luck, huh?
Oh, no, I mean that in a good way. Luck always helps.
As part of a homeowner association, Mr. Chang, we'll probably be seeing you quite frequently.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move no other business that we adjourn this meeting.
One second, Mr. Duran?
Were you going to call for public communications?
Yes. Agenda item 6, public communications. I don't have any cards, but, given that this is my first meeting chairing, I'm going to be lenient. Anybody wish to speak? There are hundreds of people in the audience today, but none of which want to speak. Wonderful. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair, maybe I could make one more introduction for you. Those of you that don't know Yvette Samvalian, Yvette is in the audience. Yvette is part of the Community Development Block Grant section. Yvette is a senior administrative analyst, and she serves as the city's homeless coordinator. So she will be making presentations to you from time to time as well. Okay.
Wonderful. Welcome, Yvette. Yvette is my favorite name in the world. My wife's name is Yvette. Okay. Any other communications? No?
I'll move for the adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second that.
No roll call needed.
Good. Thank you.